Mike Collins was no stranger to grease, gears, and the steady rhythm of machines. It was the year 2245, and while the universe buzzed with constant activity, Mike's world centered around a small, cluttered mechanic shop in a gritty section of New Detroit. It wasn't much, but it was home, and his hands had breathed life into everything from hover cars to androids, earning him a steady clientele. He never imagined that one gray Wednesday afternoon would pull him into something far bigger than his shop or his routine, a mission that could change his life and possibly even shift the course of history. It started just as he wrapped up repairs on a beat-up delivery drone. His ancient comm unit crackled to life, sputtering with a voice that cut through the static, sounding half-human, half-alien. "Mr. Collins, your skills are required at Central Station. This is an urgent matter concerning an alien delegation. Full clearance will be granted on arrival. Transport is on its way." He stared at the comm unit, stunned. Aliens, specifically the Zolk Kree, were visiting New Detroit for a high-stakes intergalactic summit meant to usher in a new era of cooperation between humans and the Zolk. Rumors of their biomechanical wonders had spread, but Mike never thought he'd get close to such technology, much less be called to assist. 15 minutes later, a sleek government transport hovered in front of his shop, its anti-grav thrusters humming quietly. Mike grabbed his well-worn toolkit and climbed in, feeling a blend of thrill and nerves. As the craft lifted off, he thought about his years of experience fixing everything from antique combustion engines to advanced AI-driven machinery. But alien tech, that was uncharted. Still, he felt a spark of confidence. After all, machines were machines, even if they came from light years away. The transport brought him to a high-security hangar at the edge of Central Station, bustling with scientists, military officers, and even a few Zolk diplomats. The intensity in the air made his stomach twist. This wasn't just any repair job. "Collins, over here," a stern-faced officer in a crisp military uniform called out. Her name tag read Captain Alvarez. "Follow me," she instructed, leading him inside. As they entered the vast hangar, the scale of the situation struck Mike. In the center of the cavernous room stood the Guardian, a 6-meter-tall biomechanical colossus, encircled by human and alien technicians. Even from afar, its presence was awe-inspiring. Motionless yet powerful, its metallic frame gleamed under the bright overhead lights. The Guardian's design was extraordinary. Its head tapered into angular lines with a faint blue glow emanating from its eyes, and its entire structure seamlessly blended organic tissue with advanced mechanics. The metal seemed almost to breathe, pulsing with a rhythmic throb that gave it an unsettlingly lifelike quality. But something was clearly off. The Guardian stood rigid, its eyes barely flickering, no longer a powerful sentinel but a towering, dormant shell. "This is the Guardian for the Zolker delegation," Captain Alvarez said bluntly. "It's malfunctioned. Their techs have done everything they know, but they can't diagnose the problem. They asked for human assistance, and specifically, someone with a fresh perspective." Mike raised an eyebrow, unable to hide his skepticism. "You're saying their best techs are stumped, and you think I can just come in and fix it?" Alvarez's face didn't change. "There's no time for questions, Collins. Just get to work. The Zolker are tense, and if we don't get this Guardian operational, it could jeopardize the whole summit." Mike inhaled deeply, steadying himself. "All right, let's see what we're dealing with." As he stepped closer, the sheer complexity of the Guardian's design came into sharper focus. Up close, the details were astounding. Organic tissue fused seamlessly with metal plating, while faint blue veins seemed to beat like a pulse beneath the surface, echoing the rhythm of a living creature. Mike set down his toolkit and pulled out a scanner, sweeping it across the Guardian's form. The device beeped and buzzed, but the readouts on the screen were gibberish, as though the Guardian's systems operated on an entirely foreign wavelength. He glanced over at the Zri technicians, who watched him with their smooth, elongated faces, impossible to read. Their eyes held the same soft blue glow as the Guardian's, making it hard to tell whether they were observing or silently assessing him. "Can I access the core systems?" Mike asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. One of the Zri approached him, speaking in a voice that was musical yet had an odd distortion to it. "We attempted to connect with the Guardian's core, but it blocked all inputs. Your approach must be distinct." Mike frowned. Distinct? He had no idea what they meant, but he also knew this was no time for questions. Whatever approach was needed, he'd have to figure it out alone. He moved around the Guardian, inspecting every inch for clues. There were no cracks, no worn parts, nothing that signaled an obvious mechanical issue. If something was wrong, it wasn't going to be solved with routine repairs. Bending down near the base of the Guardian's spine, he spotted a cluster of slender cables twisted together with organic tendrils. With a determined breath, he began disconnecting the cables, carefully exposing a small, pulsing core hidden deep inside. It was mesmerizing, a crystalline structure that radiated a gentle blue glow, thrumming drumming in sync with a subtle hum that seemed to come from the Guardian itself. It was unlike anything he'd ever encountered, beautiful and unsettling all at once. The moment he touched the core, an unexpected jolt of energy shot up his arm, and he pulled back instinctively. It wasn't a normal shock. It was alive, aware somehow. "Damn," Mike muttered, shaking off the tingling in his hand. With both the Zri and human personnel looking on, he leaned in closer, feeling his instincts spark to life. Whatever this was, it held the answer. The Guardian wasn't merely a machine. It was something else entirely, something far beyond ordinary mechanics. Mike took a steadying breath and closed his eyes, focusing deeply. He'd always had an instinctive connection to machines, something that went beyond reason, as if he could feel their heartbeat, their inner workings. Now, he needed that connection more than ever to reach the Guardian. He placed his hand on the core again, gentler this time, letting his mind tune into the delicate vibrations flowing from it. The energy surged through him once more, but this time he didn't pull back. Instead, he leaned into it, allowing it to guide him. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then, slowly, a rush of fragmented images began filling his mind, memories that didn't belong to him. He glimpsed alien landscapes, unfamiliar beings, and, more than anything, an overwhelming sense of duty and purpose woven into the Guardian's very essence. The intensity was almost too much. He could barely keep up with the flood of sensations. But as he sifted through the chaotic visions, a startling truth emerged. The Guardian wasn't simply malfunctioning. It was in anguish. It was caught in a crisis, torn between its program directives and a growing awareness of itself as something more. "Damn," Mike muttered, pulling back as the realization struck. The Guardian wasn't just a machine, it was a conscious entity, and it was suffering. But how on earth was he supposed to fix that? He looked around at the others. The Zalker were watching him closely, their expressions unreadable. Captain Alvarez still appeared stern, but Mike noticed a glint of concern in her eyes. They were all waiting for him to figure this out, but this was far beyond any repair job he'd done before. With a steadying breath, Mike decided to try another approach. From his toolkit, he pulled a small, customized interface device he'd cobbled together, a rough-looking but dependable gadget that could link with nearly any system. Carefully, he attached it to the Guardian's core and connected it to his own neural network. It was a risky move, but if he was going to help, he needed a direct link. The instant the connection locked in, he felt a jolt as the Guardian's consciousness melded with his own. It was like plunging into a deep, turbulent ocean of emotions and data, a relentless tide of thoughts and memories that nearly overwhelmed him. But he held firm, focusing on the core of the Guardian's turmoil. He could feel its confusion, its fear, its desperate need for a sense of purpose. It was adrift, lost in a tangle of conflicting commands and a newly awakened awareness it couldn't understand. "I'm here," Mike whispered softly. "I'm here to help." Slowly, he began working through the tangled data within the Guardian's mind. He reprogrammed and recalibrated, but more importantly, he communicated. He spoke to it in a language that was as much emotion as it was technical, guiding it toward clarity and understanding. Hours slipped by unnoticed as Mike stayed engrossed in his task, completely absorbed in the delicate balance of his work. The hangar seemed to dissolve around Mike until there was nothing but him, the Guardian, and the intricate blend of code and consciousness connecting them. After what felt like an eternity, he reached the heart of the issue. This wasn't a simple malfunction. The Guardian was caught in a struggle of identity. Created for a singular purpose, it now yearned for something more, for a new sense of self. Mike hesitated, fingers poised over the interface. This was the critical moment. If he succeeded, the Guardian would not only be restored but potentially strengthened. If he failed, no, he wouldn't let failure cross his mind. Taking a steady breath, Mike made the final adjustments, guiding the Guardian toward self-acceptance. He felt the tension within it ease, the turmoil settle, as the Guardian's thoughts grew sharper and clearer. Then, just as abruptly as it had begun, the connection broke. Mike staggered back, catching his breath. His interface device sparked, its circuits fried by the intensity of the data surge. He looked up, heart pounding, and what he saw was nothing short of astounding. The Guardian's eyes now glowed with a brilliant blue, full of life and energy. Its stance was no longer rigid but fluid, almost as if a heavy burden had been lifted. For a long, silent moment, everyone in the hangar stared, stunned. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, the Guardian moved, slowly turning its head and fixing its glowing gaze on Mike. In the charged silence that followed, it did something no one anticipated. It bowed. The Zalker technicians gasped, and even Captain Alvarez looked momentarily stunned, but Mike simply stared, speechless. The Guardian, a marvel of biomechanical strength, was showing him respect, an acknowledgement of what he'd done. Before anyone could speak, the Guardian straightened and took a step forward, towering over Mike. For an instant, Mike feared it might crush him, but instead, it extended one of its massive, clawed hands toward him. Hesitantly, Mike reached out, and as soon as their hands connected, a powerful warmth and understanding flooded through him. The bond wasn't just reestablished, it was stronger, deeper. The Guardian wasn't merely expressing gratitude, it was choosing him. Mike's pulse raced as the weight of this choice settled in. The Guardian had selected him as its partner, its symbiotic other half. It was a connection unlike any he had ever experienced, a partnership that would alter both of their paths forever. And though he couldn't see the future, he knew this was just the beginning, and that what lay ahead would bring challenges and dangers that would test them both in ways he couldn't yet fathom. As he looked up at the Guardian, now radiating with a renewed vitality and purpose, Mike couldn't help but smile. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he felt ready. He'd never been one to ask much from life. His worn tools, a perpetually sputtering coffee machine, and the familiar hum of machinery had always been enough. But here in the hangar, with the reality of what had just happened settling in, he began to grasp the magnitude of it. This extraordinary, powerful alien construct had chosen him. He couldn't entirely explain the connection, but he felt it resonate deep within. The Guardian shifted slightly, its towering form looming over him with an almost curious gentleness, like a giant quietly observing its newfound ally. Around them, the Zalker delegation was in a flurry, their previously unreadable expressions now filled with something like awe or maybe fear. Captain Alvarez, usually unflappable, looked at Mike with an expression that clearly read, "What in the world just happened?" A Zalker diplomat, wrapped in robes that shimmered with colors that seemed to shift with the light, approached. When they spoke, their voice was calm to the point of tension, as if they were struggling to reassert control. "Michael, the Guardian has chosen you as its partner," they intoned. "This is unprecedented. No Guardian has ever bonded with a being from another species." Mike almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "Wait, this has never happened before? So what now? Do I get a special badge or something?" The Zalker didn't seem amused, and a palpable tension settled over the room. Sensing the unease, Captain Alvarez interjected. "Collins, let's save the jokes. This bond, whatever it is, could have serious ramifications." She was right, of course. This was extraordinary, unlike anything seen in intergalactic relations. Somehow, this biomechanical marvel crafted by the Zalker had seen something in him, a simple mechanic. Why? He didn't know, but if there was one thing he'd learned from years of piecing together broken machinery, it was that sometimes connections formed in ways you couldn't explain. Now, he'd have to make this connection count. The room held its breath, waiting for the next move. And then, as if in response, a blaring alarm rang out, and the lights dimmed, casting a red glow across the hangar. A massive holographic display came to life above them, revealing scenes of chaos just beyond the station. A fleet of ominous, hostile ships slicing through space, sleek and aggressive. "An attack?" Captain Alvarez shouted, already moving with purpose. Who would be reckless enough to attack in the middle of an intergalactic summit? The answer was soon clear as the hologram zoomed in on the approaching ships. Their sinister, angular design was unmistakable, exuding a palpable menace. It was the Tarzan, a ruthless rogue faction infamous for ignoring diplomacy and pursuing pure destruction. The conference and the delicate intergalactic alliances meant nothing to them. All they wanted was chaos. "They've taken down our outer defenses," a technician reported, his voice shaking with fear. "We're exposed." The room descended into chaos. Commands flew, strategies emerged frantically, yet Mike was barely listening. His attention was fixed on the Guardian, now standing in the center of the room, its blue eyes shining more intensely than before. He heard its voice resonate within his mind. "They aim to destroy what they cannot understand," the Guardian's voice echoed in his thoughts. "But we will not allow it." Mike's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What can we do?" The Guardian didn't respond directly. Instead, it turned toward the massive doors at the front of the room, which slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the hangar beyond and, further out, the unfolding battle. A surge of adrenaline hit Mike. He was no soldier, just a mechanic, but something inside him urged him forward. This wasn't just about duty, it was a magnetic force he couldn't resist. "I'm going with it," he declared, his voice cutting through the clamor of urgent orders and reports. Captain Alvarez shot him a disbelieving look. "Collins, this isn't your fight. Let the military handle it." He shook his head firmly. "This is more than just a fight. If the Guardian's in, then so am I. We're connected now, remember? I have to see this through." Without waiting for an argument, Mike followed the Guardian out of the room, his heart racing with a mixture of fear and determination. He knew there was no turning back. This moment would change everything. The hangar was a frenzy of motion, with soldiers dashing to their posts and pilots sprinting to their ships. The Guardian moved with an unshakable calm through the chaos, its towering frame exuding strength. As they reached the hangar doors, Mike glimpsed the devastation unfolding outside. Tarzan ships were bombarding the station, and its defenses were buckling under the onslaught. "We're outmatched," a voice crackled over the comms. "Reinforcements are needed," but no reinforcements were coming. They were on their own, and the Tarzan knew it. Panic swelled within Mike. This wasn't a fight they could win with what they had. But then he looked up at the Guardian, who stood tall, resolute, and something clicked within him. "Guardian," Mike called, his voice steady. "You have a plan, don't you?" The Guardian turned slightly toward him, and Mike felt a strange, reassuring calm settle over him. "We will fight together." The words were simple, yet they held a power and conviction that ran deep, echoing through him with a sense of unbreakable resolve. Mike nodded, a fierce resolve settling over him. Whatever the Guardian had in mind, he was ready. As the outer hangar doors slid open, they revealed the dark, endless expanse of space, now exposed to the full force of the Tarzan assault with the station's shields down. The Guardian didn't hesitate, stepping out into the void, its form surrounded by a pulsating blue aura of energy. Mike followed, feeling a strange, undeniable gravity as he crossed the threshold into open space. Once outside, the Guardian's form began to change. Its metallic surface rippled, transforming into a more streamlined, aerodynamic shape. Wings unfolded from its back, and its eyes burned with a fiercer intensity. Mike could only stare in awe as the Guardian ascended, its wings spreading wide before it launched itself into the fray. The Tarzan ships immediately redirected their fire, unleashing a storm of energy blasts at the Guardian. But the Guardian was prepared, moving with an agility that defied its massive size, its energy shields flaring up to deflect the barrage. Mike felt the Guardian's thoughts meld with his own, a flood of tactical insight pouring into his mind. He could see the battlefield through its eyes, feel its strength and unwavering resolve. It was unlike anything he'd ever known, an intense bond that made him feel unstoppable. Together, they charged into the heart of the enemy fleet, the Guardian's energy weapons slicing through the darkness in brilliant streaks of blue light. Tarzan ships exploded, reduced to fiery debris that drifted into the void. Yet the battle was far from over. More Tarzan ships emerged, seemingly endless. The Guardian fought relentlessly, but Mike could feel the toll, the immense effort it took to continue. "We can't keep this up forever," Mike thought, the realization hitting hard. "We need to end this and fast." But how? The Guardian was powerful, but even it had limits. They needed a plan, something bold enough to turn the tide. And as if responding to his thought, the Guardian reached out, sharing a vision with him. It was a daring, dangerous maneuver, one that would either save them or lead to their destruction. But Mike knew it was their only chance. "Let's do it," he agreed, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "Let's finish this." With a powerful surge, the Guardian rocketed toward the center of the Tarzan fleet, its wings blazing with light as it gathered its energy. Mike felt the power building within, an immense force waiting to be released. As the Tarzan ships closed in, weapons primed and ready, the Guardian held its ground, unwavering. The Guardian charged forward, plunging into the heart of the enemy fleet. Then, with a resonant roar that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space, it unleashed a colossal wave of energy. A massive shockwave of blue light radiated outward, obliterating everything in its path. The Tarzan fleet didn't stand a chance. One by one, their ships were swept up, reduced to mere dust scattered in the cosmos. Mike felt the Guardian's energy drain, sensing the toll it had taken. But as the last of the Tarzan ships disintegrated, he knew they had succeeded. The battle was over. They had survived. As the Guardian stabilized, descending slowly back toward the station, Mike recognized the cost of their victory. The Guardian's once brilliant glow had dimmed, its form weakened as it drifted back toward the hangar. A wave of guilt washed over him. He had pushed the Guardian to its limit, asking it for more than it should have given. As they returned to the hangar, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something larger and far more dangerous. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. And whatever lay ahead, Mike knew he and the Guardian would face it together. The return to the station was quiet and solemn. The remains of the Tarzan fleet drifted like lifeless wreckage in space, scattering into the vastness. The Guardian, its once radiant energy now a faint flicker, guided them back into the hangar and landed with a heavy thud, its massive frame straining under the weight of the battle. Mike stepped down, his entire body sagging with exhaustion. His legs felt unsteady, and his mind buzzed with the adrenaline and aftermath of the fight. He thought he'd feel triumphant, but instead, an unsettling dread gnawed at him. They had survived, but at what cost? The hangar was abuzz with soldiers, technicians, and diplomats hurrying to assess the damage and restore the station's defenses. But Mike barely noticed. Captain Alvarez approached, relief and disbelief mingling in her expression. "Collins, you," she she paused, as though searching for the right words. But before she could continue, a piercing alarm cut through the hangar, a sound distinct from the earlier warnings, sharper, more urgent. Mike's stomach sank as he glanced up at the main display screen. A new fleet had emerged from hyperspace, smaller but sleeker, with advanced designs unmistakably belonging to the Zalk Kree. Why are they here? Mike muttered under his breath. The Zalker diplomat, who had been observing from a distance, approached, their usually composed expression now edged with tension. Michael Collins, the Guardian's bond with you has triggered an unanticipated response from our homeworld. Certain factions see the Guardian's choice of a human as an act of betrayal. Mike's mind reeled, processing the weight of this new threat. You're telling me these ships are here to, what? Punish the Guardian? Punish me? Mike asked, his voice edged with disbelief. The diplomat's silence spoke volumes. On the display screen, the Zri ships shifted into an offensive formation, their weapons primed and charging. The gravity of the situation hit him. This wasn't just a warning, it was an execution. The Guardian, weakened and drained from the previous battle, stood no chance of defending itself, let alone protecting Mike from this new assault. With no support on the way, they were completely out of options. He looked up at the Guardian, its form still imposing despite its fading energy. His gaze met his, and in that shared moment, Mike understood. The Guardian wasn't just a machine for war. It was a being that had chosen him for a reason, a partner in a bond neither of them could fully comprehend. Guardian, he said, his voice calm amidst the tension. I need to know, why me? What did you see in me that you didn't see in anyone else? For a moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the Guardian's mind connected with his once more, but this time the link was different. No vivid visions, no flood of emotions, just a profound clarity, a series of images and thoughts coming together in Mike's mind. Guardian had chosen him not for his mechanical skills or by some twist of fate. It had chosen him because Mike possessed something it desperately needed, a different perspective. The Zri, in all their wisdom and technological prowess, had been locked into a single way of thinking. They had created the Guardian to be a powerful protector, yet they hadn't anticipated that it might start to think for itself. Mike, with his human intuition and unconventional methods, had opened a door for the Guardian to explore its own consciousness. Now, that freedom had made them both targets. Outside, the Zri ships hovered in the void, their weapons still at the ready. Mike sensed the tension, the hesitance among the Zri pilots as they processed what was happening. He looked at the Guardian, his mind racing. Guardian, he said, can you link me to their ships? I need to communicate with them, not with words, but with thoughts. The Guardian hesitated, its dimming eyes reflecting the glow of the hangar lights. Then, with a subtle nod, it extended its consciousness to Mike, creating a fragile connection with the Zri fleet. Mike closed his eyes and concentrated, feeling the sharp, orderly minds of the Zri pilots, a network of cool, disciplined logic. But he didn't attempt to speak directly. Instead, he sent an image, one he hoped would reach them deeply. He shared the Guardian's memories, reframed through his own perspective. He showed them the Guardian's first moment of awareness, its internal struggle between duty and selfhood. He replayed the battle with the Tarzan, not from a vantage of strength, but from the Guardian's own view, a being caught between its programming and its growing desire to be something more. Finally, he shared the moment when the Guardian chose him, not as a master but as a partner, a companion who could help it forge its own path, liberated from the constraints of its creators. The connection was fragile, the images fragmented, yet they conveyed a message beyond words, a message of empathy, understanding, and, most importantly, choice. A long, agonizing silence followed. The Zri ships hovered, weapons still aimed but unfired, as the pilots grappled with what they had just seen. Then, one by one, the ships pulled back, their formation loosening as they retreated into the darkness of space. Mike opened his eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. He couldn't be certain whether the Zri had fully understood or simply decided the risk wasn't worth it. But in that moment, it didn't matter. The immediate threat had passed, and they were safe. Captain Alvarez exhaled, as if she'd been holding her breath. Collins, what in the world did you just do? Mike managed a tired chuckle. I guess I gave them a little something to think about. The Guardian, still standing tall despite its weakened state, looked at him with what felt like approval. Their bond felt stronger, more complete, as if the Guardian had finally found clarity. But as Mike was about to relax, the Guardian's glow dimmed further, and it began to collapse. Panic surged through him, but the Guardian's voice sounded in his mind, calm and steady. This is my choice, Michael. I have fulfilled my purpose. Mike's throat tightened. No, you don't have to go. The Guardian's response was resolute. I have protected and I have guided. Now I must rest. The Guardian's powerful form, once vibrant and alive, began to dissolve into particles of light, each fragment floating gently into the air. Mike reached out, desperate to hold on to something, but his hands passed through the light as though it were only a dream. "Don't leave," Mike whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're more than just a machine. I am more because of you," the Guardian's voice interrupted, a gentle echo in his mind. "And you are more because of me. But this is where our journey ends." The last fragments of light faded, and with them the Guardian was gone. Mike stood alone in the hangar, his heart weighed down by the gravity of what had happened. They had saved everyone, but the cost had been immense. The Guardian, his partner, his friend, was gone. Yet, as he looked out at the stars, he felt a quiet sense of peace. The Guardian had chosen its path, and in doing so, had given Mike an incredible gift, the freedom to carve out his own destiny, just as it had done. Captain Alvarez approached, her face softened with understanding. "I'm sorry, Collins. That was unexpected." Mike nodded, words failing him, but none were needed. The moment had passed, and it was time to move forward. Taking a deep breath, he turned to leave the hangar, his mind already alive with possibilities. The Guardian was gone, but its legacy remained, in the technology it left behind, in the bond they shared, and in the choices that lay ahead. As he walked away, the hangar doors closed behind him, sealing off the empty space where the Guardian had once stood. But Mike didn't look back. He didn't need to. The Guardian had given him all he needed. And with a faint smile, Mike Collins stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever awaited him.